So it's been a long time since I've talked about this with anyone outside my immediate circle. But something happened recently that's got me reconsidering everything. I guess I need some outside perspective. 9 years ago, my life was turned upside down. I, 41 male, was married to my wife, 40 female, for almost 8 years at that point. We had two kids, a daughter who was 7, a son who was 5 at the time. From the outside, we seemed like a normal, happy family. I had a stable job as a software engineer at a mid-sized company, making enough to afford our modest house in the suburbs of Phoenix. My wife worked part-time as a marketing assistant, which gave her flexibility to be home with the kids after school. We weren't rich by any means, but we were comfortable. Looking back, I think the problem started about a year before she left. My wife began spending more time on social media, particularly following these boss babe influencers and entrepreneurial women who claim to have it all: successful businesses, freedom from the 9 to 5 grind, and seemingly perfect lives. She'd constantly show me their posts about taking control of your destiny and breaking free from societal expectations. I didn't think much of it at first. I figured it was just a phase, or maybe she was feeling a bit restless. Then she started attending these weekend empowerment seminars. They weren't cheap, usually around $500 to $1,000 a pop, but she insisted they were investments in her future. She'd come back from these events hyped up with new jargon about abundance mindsets and stepping into her power. The credit card bills started piling up, but whenever I tried to talk to her about our budget, she'd accuse me of limiting her potential and being afraid of her success. These seminars led to her joining what she called a mastermind group, basically a bunch of women who met weekly at upscale coffee shops or wine bars to talk about their entrepreneurial journeys. From what I could gather, most of them were either involved in MLMs, trying to become life coaches despite having no qualifications, or brand consultants without any actual clients. Our home life began deteriorating. She was constantly on her phone, either scrolling through Instagram or on long calls with her new friends. The kids would ask for help with homework and she'd brush them off, saying she was networking. Dinners became rare, and when they did happen, she'd spend the whole time talking about her plans to start a personal branding agency, despite having no real business plan or experience. Then came the morning I'll never forget. I woke up to find a note on her pillow saying she needed to find herself and live authentically. She wrote that she felt stifled by family life and that she deserved to explore her potential without being held back. No mention of the kids, no real explanation of where she was going, just that she needed space and would be in touch. I was devastated. The kids were confused and heartbroken. My daughter kept asking if mommy didn't love us anymore. My son was too young to fully understand and would stand by the window every evening waiting for her to come home. It was gut-wrenching. I called her parents, her friends, even her workplace, but no one knew where she'd gone. I was about to file a missing person report when she finally texted 3 days later saying she was safe and beginning her journey. She asked for time and space and said she would explain everything when the time was right. A week later, I received divorce papers. She was filing for divorce on grounds of irreconcilable differences. The papers listed her new address as an apartment downtown, about 30 minutes from our home. What shocked me most was that she was not asking for custody of the kids, just occasional visitation rights. It was like she was abandoning not just me, but them too. I hired a lawyer immediately. Given the circumstances, I was advised that I had a strong case for full custody, especially since she had abandoned the family home and shown little interest in being a primary caregiver. The divorce proceedings were surprisingly straightforward. She didn't contest anything regarding the kids, only asking for some personal belongings and a small portion of our savings, much less than she was entitled to. It was as if she wanted a clean break from her old life, including her own children. During this time, I was struggling to keep it together. I had to explain to the kids why mommy wasn't coming home, arrange for childcare, maintain my job, and deal with my own grief and anger. My parents were a godsend. They moved in with us temporarily to help with the transition. My boss was understanding, allowing me to work flexible hours and sometimes from home. As for my ex wife, her communication was minimal. She would text occasionally asking about the kids, but rarely follow through on the visitation schedule established by the court. When she did see them, it was awkward and brief. She'd take them to a restaurant or a movie, but struggled to connect with them. The kids would come home confused and upset, asking why mommy didn't want to live with us anymore. Through mutual acquaintances, I learned that she had rebranded herself on social media as a lifestyle entrepreneur and mindset coach. Her profile showed no evidence of her being a mother or having been married. It was as if we never existed. She was posting heavily filtered photos at networking events, motivational quotes, and vague descriptions of her thriving business. From what I could piece together, she was basically doing odd social media jobs for small businesses while trying to build her personal brand. About a year after she left, I discovered she had joined what I can only describe as a cult like program. It wasn't a religious cult in the traditional sense, but it had all the markers of predatory group dynamics, expensive membership fees, isolation from negative influences, which apparently included family, pressure to recruit others, and blind devotion to the leader, a woman who called herself Serena Divine. I later found out her real name was Sarah Jones, a former failed real estate agent from Nevada. This group seemed to prey specifically on women who were dissatisfied with their lives, promising them that they could achieve wealth, freedom, and fulfillment if they just invested in themselves and followed the program. The investment, of course, meant thousands of dollars in courses, retreats, and one on one coaching sessions. Over the next 2 years, my ex wife's visits with the kids became even more sporadic. Sometimes she'd go 3 or 4 months without seeing them at all. When I text her about it, she'd respond with vague excuses about building her empire or being on a business retreat. Once, my daughter's birthday passed without even a phone call, which left her in tears. Meanwhile, I was doing my best to rebuild our lives. I joined a support group for single parents, which was immensely helpful. I also started dating again, cautiously. I met Sarah, a kindergarten teacher and fellow single parent, about 3 years after my divorce. We took things slowly, mindful of how it might affect the kids, but they adored her. She was patient and kind, never trying to replace their mother, but offering steady support and love. 5 years after the divorce, we got married in a small ceremony with just family and close friends. By then, my kids were 12 and 10, old enough to understand what was happening. They were both happy about the marriage, with my daughter even serving as one of Sarah's bridesmaids. Sarah legally adopted the kids a year later with my ex wife's permission, which she gave easily without much discussion. It was bittersweet. On one hand, my children now had a loving, present mother figure. On the other, it formalized what we already knew. Their biological mother had chosen to step away from her role in their lives almost completely. Life settled into a new normal. The kids thrived with stability and consistent love. My son became an avid soccer player, and my daughter discovered a passion for art and computer programming. Sarah and I had a baby boy, now 2 years old, whom the older kids adored. We moved to a slightly bigger house in the same school district, wanting to maintain the kids' friendships and routines. Then, about 2 weeks ago, out of the blue, I received a text from my ex wife asking if we could meet. It had been almost 9 years since she left, and in that time, she had seen the kids maybe 20 times total, always briefly. Her last visit had been over a year ago, a quick lunch where she spent most of the time on her phone. I agreed to meet her at a coffee shop near my office. I wasn't sure what to expect, but what I found was shocking. The glamorous, confident boss babe persona she had cultivated online was nowhere to be seen. Instead, she looked tired, much older than her 40 years. After awkward small talk, she got to the point and she wanted to come back into the kids' lives, not just for occasional visits, but regularly. She said she had been doing deep personal work and realized that walking away from her family had been the biggest mistake of her life. Her business ventures had all failed, leaving her in significant debt. The group had eventually imploded amid accusations of financial impropriety against the founder, leaving many women, including my ex, feeling betrayed and lost. She told me she was now working as an administrative assistant at an insurance company, the kind of 9 to 5 job she had once scorned as living in a cage. She had been in therapy for the past year and was, in her words, facing the reality of the choices I made. She said she missed the kids terribly and wanted a chance to make amends. I told her I would need to think about it and talk to Sarah and the kids. I wasn't going to make unilateral decisions about something that affected our whole family, especially the children who had already been hurt by her once. When I got home, the first thing I did was talk to Sarah about everything. She was understandably worried, but also incredibly supportive, like she always is. Her main focus, just like mine, was doing what was best for the kids. We both agreed that before making any decisions or jumping into anything, we should speak to the kids separately. We didn't want our own opinions or feelings to influence their thoughts. It was important that they had the space to process it on their own. My daughter, who's 16 now, had a very strong reaction. She didn't hold back her feelings at all. She made it clear that she didn't consider my ex-wife her mom. For her, Sarah is the one who's been there, the one who showed up and stuck around. She brought up a lot of painful memories, how many times she had waited around for her birth mom to visit, only to be left disappointed. These memories weren't just stories to her. They were real moments of pain and abandonment that had left their mark. She couldn't understand why she should open up to someone who hadn't been there when it mattered the most. My son, who's 14, had a more subdued but still conflicted response. He doesn't remember as much about his biological mom because he was younger when she left. But that didn't mean he was affected. He grew up knowing that she had walked away, and he's had his own share of letdowns, missed calls, broken promises, visits that never happened. He said he didn't really know her, and from the way he said it, I could tell that made him feel unsure and uneasy. He wasn't angry the way his sister was, but there was a quiet sadness in him that said a lot. After those conversations, I got back in touch with my ex-wife. I tried to explain things gently. I told her the kids weren't ready for a relationship with her right now. I also said that if she truly wanted to reconnect, maybe it would be better to start slow. Send letters or emails, give the kids a chance to respond on their own terms without any pressure. I thought that might be a fair, respectful way to begin rebuilding trust if that's what she really wanted. But her reaction completely caught me off guard. She got defensive right away and accused me of turning the kids against her. She said I'd brainwashed them and that no child would reject their own mother unless someone had poisoned them. Then she went a step further and said she'd go to court if she had to, insisting she had a right to see them. I was shocked. After years of almost no contact and barely any involvement, suddenly she was talking about legal action? I reminded her, calmly but clearly, that she had willingly given up custody years ago. She had even signed the papers allowing Sarah to adopt the kids. Her rights were limited by choices she made herself, not by anything I did. But she didn't seem to hear any of that. She ended the conversation in tears, blaming me for everything, saying I had stolen her children and ruined her life. I hung up feeling shaken and confused, not knowing what she might do next. That evening I sat down with the kids again, this time with Sarah there too. I didn't want to hide anything from them. I told them about the conversation I had with their birth mom and the possibility that she might try to push for contact through the courts. I wanted them to be prepared just in case. My daughter was furious. She said there was no way she would agree to see her, and I could tell she meant it. My son didn't say much, but he nodded in agreement with his sister. They were both firm in their stance. Now I find myself stuck. I do believe people can change. I know life is messy and sometimes people realize their mistakes and genuinely want to make things right. Part of me wonders if that's what's happening here. But another part of me can't ignore how quickly she went from asking for contact to making threats. It makes me question how much she's really changed, or if this is just another pattern of impulsive, self centered behavior. And more than anything, I need to protect my kids. They've already been through enough. I keep asking myself, should I try to push for some kind of relationship between the kids and their biological mom, even if they don't want it? Would that be forcing something that might hurt them more? Or am I right in supporting their decision to keep their distance for now? Legally, I'm also wondering what actual rights she has since she gave up custody and consented to the adoption. I think the threat of court might be more about emotion than anything concrete. But it still worries me. I don't want to be caught off guard if she decides to act on it. I'm just a dad trying to do the right thing. All I want is to protect my kids and make sure they feel safe, heard, and supported. They've already had to grow up with a lot more emotional baggage than they deserved. And the last thing I want is to open the door to more heartbreak, especially if nothing has truly changed on her end. Update 1. First, I want to thank everyone for their thoughtful responses and support. It's been overwhelming to see so many people share their own experiences and offer advice. To clarify a few points that came up in the comments. Yes, my ex-wife did legally consent to Sarah adopting the kids. We have all the paperwork properly filed and approved by the court. And yes, I have documented her spotty visitation history over the years, including texts where she canceled plans with the kids. Yesterday, I received an email from my ex-wife, significantly different in tone from our coffee shop conversation. She apologized for her emotional reaction and for threatening legal action. She said she had spoken to a lawyer who confirmed what many of you pointed out, that she has very little legal standing given the adoption and her history of minimal involvement. She wrote that she was coming to terms with the consequences of my choices and would respect the kids' boundaries. She asked if she could write them letters instead of seeing them in person, saying she understood they needed time and space. This approach feels more reasonable to me, but I still wanted to check with the kids before agreeing. I showed the email to my daughter first. She read it silently and then said, "She can write if she wants. I don't promise to write back." My son had a similar reaction, willing to receive letters but making no commitments about responding. I then consulted with our family therapist. Yes, we still check in occasionally, especially during major life transitions. She thought letters could be a controlled way to begin a communication if the kids were comfortable with it. She suggested having the letters come to me first so I could ensure there was nothing manipulative or inappropriate before passing them on to the kids. So I responded to my ex-wife, setting clear boundaries. She could send letters or emails to me, and I would share them with the kids if the content was appropriate. I emphasized that the kids would decide if and when to respond, and she needed to respect their pace. I also made it clear that any return to threatening behavior would end this arrangement immediately. She agreed to these terms, seeming grateful for any opportunity to connect. I'm cautiously optimistic, but still wary. People don't change overnight, and her pattern has been to be inconsistent at best. As for Sarah, she continues to be incredibly supportive. She told me last night that she's secure in her relationship with the kids and doesn't feel threatened by their biological mother reaching out. They know who's been there for them, she said, but they're getting old enough to form their own opinions and make their own choices about relationships. I'm so thankful for her wisdom and strength. For now, we're taking it one day at a time. I'll update again if anything significant happens. Update 2. Things have escalated in ways I didn't expect. I'm writing this from my home office, still trying to process everything that happened today. My ex-wife sent the first letters to the kids 3 days ago. I read them before passing them on, as agreed. They were actually quite appropriate, apologetic, without being manipulative, acknowledging her long absence, expressing interest in their lives now without making demands. I gave them to the kids, who read them privately. Neither wanted to respond immediately, but they didn't seem upset by the content. My daughter said, "It's weird to get a letter from a stranger who knows all about you," which I thought was a pretty insightful observation. Yesterday afternoon, I received a call from the kids' school. My ex-wife had shown up there trying to see them. The school thankfully followed their security protocols and didn't allow her access, since she's not on the approval list of people who can pick them up. The front office staff called me immediately. I left work and went to the school, where I found my ex-wife arguing with the principal. When she saw me, she started crying, saying she couldn't wait any longer and just wanted to see their faces. The principal took us to a private room, where I had tried to calm her down and understand what had happened. Through tears, she explained that after sending the letters, she had become increasingly anxious about not hearing back. She convinced herself I was intercepting her messages, not giving them to the kids. Her solution was to go to their school. She seemed genuinely surprised when I told her it had only been 3 days since they received her letters, hardly enough time to process them and respond. The principal, who was aware of our family situation in broad strokes, was firm but compassionate. She explained to my ex that the school had strict protocols for student safety, and showing up unannounced was not acceptable, regardless of biological connections. My ex apologized, seemingly embarrassed by her behavior once it was laid out like that. I took her outside to talk privately. I reminded her of our agreement and emphasized that ambushing the kids at school was exactly the kind of boundary violation that would make me reconsider allowing any contact. She seemed to understand, apologizing repeatedly and promising it wouldn't happen again. I was willing to give her one more chance, but things took another turn when the kids got home. They had heard about the incident from classmates. News travels fast in high school. My daughter was furious, calling it psycho behavior. My son was visibly anxious, asking if she could just show up at our house too. I assured them both that their home was safe and that I would be reinforcing boundaries with their biological mother. My daughter then dropped a bombshell. She had looked up her mother's social media accounts and found recent posts that concerned her. Apparently, my ex had been posting about reuniting with her precious children and reclaiming her role as their mother. There were vague references to overcoming obstacles put in place by negative influences, which I assume meant me. Most disturbingly, she had shared childhood photos of the kids that must have been from before she left, presenting an image of continued motherhood that simply didn't match reality. My daughter was livid, feeling like her life and image were being used to create a false narrative. "She's still fake, just in a different way now," she said. My son asked if we could change the locks on our house, which broke my heart. After getting the kids settled, I called my ex-wife. The conversation was difficult, and I told her about the kids' reactions to both the school incident and her social media posts. I explained that presenting herself online as an active mother in their lives was dishonest and hurtful to them. I also made it clear that any further boundary violations would result in me seeking a restraining order. She alternated between apologetic and defensive, claiming she was just trying to manifest positive change with her posts. When I pointed out that using the kids' images and misrepresenting her relationship with them wasn't manifesting, but manipulation, she grew quiet. Eventually, she agreed to take down the posts and promised again to respect our boundaries. She sounded subdued and said she would step back and reconsider her approach. I don't know if I believe her this time. I've contacted my lawyer to discuss options for legally enforcing boundaries if necessary. I've also reached out to the kids' therapist for an emergency session tomorrow to help them process these events. Right now, I'm feeling angry and protective, but also sad for everyone involved. The kids are shaken, and I hate seeing them go through this stress. But part of me also feels pity for my ex wife, who seems so desperate to reclaim what she threw away years ago that she's making irrational decisions. I'll update again soon once we've had time to regroup and decide on next steps. Update 3. I'm still in shock as I write this final update. The situation with my ex wife has resolved itself in a way none of us expected. The day after my last update, we had our emergency family therapy session. The kids expressed their feelings about the school incident and the social media posts, which the therapist validated as completely reasonable responses. She helped them articulate boundaries they felt comfortable with and suggested some coping strategies for dealing with the stress. After the session, my daughter asked if she could try writing a letter back to her biological mother, with the clear understanding that I would read it first and that she wasn't obligated to continue correspondence if she didn't want to. My son wasn't ready to write anything but said he might reconsider in the future. My daughter's letter was remarkably mature and direct. She explained that while she appreciated the apology, she wasn't interested in developing a mother-daughter relationship. She wrote, "Sarah has been my mom in all the ways that matter for most of my life. I don't have space or need for another mother figure. Maybe someday we can know each other as people, but not as mother and daughter." She also directly addressed the school incident and social media posts, telling her biological mother that those actions made her feel unsafe and disrespected. I read the letter, offering some minor suggestions which my daughter considered, and then sent it to my ex-wife's email as agreed. And that was 2 days ago. Yesterday morning, I received a call from a number I didn't recognize. It was my ex-wife's younger sister, with whom I'd had minimal contact over the years. She was calling me to let me know that my ex had been admitted to the hospital after an apparent suicide attempt. She had taken an overdose of sleeping pills, but was found in time by a neighbor who came to check on her when she didn't show up for a planned coffee date. I was stunned and immediately concerned about whether this was related to my daughter's letter. Her sister assured me that while the letter might have been a contributing factor, my ex had been struggling with severe depression for months, possibly years, following the collapse of her entrepreneurial dreams, and the group that had taken so much of her money and time. She had been in therapy but had recently stopped going and had run out of her prescribed antidepressants about a week ago. The sister also asked if I would tell the kids, feeling they had a right to know, but understanding if I wanted to shield them from this information. After consulting quickly with Sarah and our family therapist by phone, I decided to tell them in an age-appropriate way with the therapist present via video call for support. Their reactions were complex. My daughter initially worried that her letter had caused the suicide attempt, but the therapist helped her understand that people's actions of this nature stem from deep internal struggles, not from a single letter, no matter how direct. My son was quiet, but asked thoughtful questions about mental health and whether his biological mother would be okay. We assured them both that she was receiving good care and that her sister was with her. We emphasized that this situation was not their responsibility to fix, but that we would support them in whatever feelings came up around it. Today I received another call from the sister. My ex-wife is physically stable and has been transferred to the psychiatric unit for further evaluation and treatment. She will likely be there for at least a week. The hospital found the letter from my daughter during their standard search of her belongings upon admission, and the sister wanted me to know that after talking with the psychiatrist, they don't believe the letter was a primary trigger for the attempt. Rather, it seemed to be the culmination of years of regret and unprocessed grief, as the sister put it. The sister also revealed something I hadn't known. Apparently, my ex wife had been planning to move back to her hometown in Oregon next month, having secured a job transfer within her insurance company. The sister speculated that the impending move, combined with the failed attempt to reconnect with the kids, might have triggered a crisis of reckoning with her life choices. After this call, I sat down with the kids again. I updated them on their biological mother's condition and shared the information about her planned move. My daughter seemed relieved that she would be physically farther away, but also expressed sympathy for her struggles. My son asked if we could send flowers or a card to the hospital, which surprised me, but also made me proud of his compassion. We agreed as a family to send a simple bouquet with a card wishing her healing and peace. The kids both signed their names, just their names, no love or familial terms, which felt like an appropriate boundary. The sister has promised to keep me updated on her condition and has asked if she could stay in touch with the kids through letters or emails, even after her sister moves to Oregon. She's been estranged from my ex for many years due to the involvement, but reconnected recently when my ex reached out for support during her depression. The kids seem open to corresponding with their aunt, who they have some positive early childhood memories of. I'm left with deeply mixed feelings about this whole situation. There's relief that my ex wife will be physically distant and receiving the mental health care she clearly needs. There's sadness for the years lost and the pain everyone has experienced. And there's a cautious hope that maybe with proper boundaries and expectations, the kids might eventually have some kind of healthy relationship with their biological mother, or at least with their aunt. Sarah continues to be my rock through all of this, offering wisdom and support without judgment. Last night she said something that really resonated with me. Families come in all forms and sometimes they change shape over time. What matters is that there's love and respect at the foundation. So that's where we stand now. Not the resolution I expected, but perhaps the beginning of a healthier chapter for everyone involved. I want to thank this community for the support and advice during one of the most challenging periods of our family's journey. Your perspectives help me maintain clarity when things got confusing. If there's one thing I've learned through all of this, it's that while we can't control others' choices, we can control how we respond to them. And sometimes the most loving response, both for ourselves and others, is to maintain firm boundaries while still offering compassion from a distance. Stay tuned for more stories from Argo relationships.